Welcome in to Wager Talk's last call. I am Kelly Stewart, and we have a star-studded lineup for you guys today. We're going to start off with Yanni the Greek. We've got Ralph Michaels, Steve Merrill, and Kyle Anthony, if he can find the login link, might join us to talk about UFC Perth. We're going to find out today. Up next on Last Call, I've got the needs from the Westgate Superbook we'll get to here in a minute. But first, I want to hear from VR. I know he's got a busy day ahead of him. He's got a new background. It looks beautiful there in Las Vegas. Welcome in. Good morning, VR. Always appreciate you hanging out with us here early on the West Coast. VR, we got you muted. Let me get you unmuted there. Nope, we still muted. We gotta redo that. I don't know how you got muted, but I can't unmute you. I apologize. For some reason on the back end, I can't do that. It's in the bottom corner there for you. Hit the mic button. While VR is doing that, guys, while we get him unmuted, I'm going to read you guys some of the sharp stuff here from the Westgate Superbook. We'll go right into it. And I'm going to say right now, I love this first one from Art at the Westgate. Iowa is going to be a big need. Iowa, if you guys remember, is in my 3-team money line parlay for today. I am very excited about this Iowa team. I think this is a really great spot for them and their defense to maybe stifle that freight train that is Indiana. They also need Central Michigan, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Remember, they just fired their head coach, Mike Gundy. And this one surprised me. He said they are going to need Georgia. He said some sharp plays that are worth noting. Bowling Green that got bet at +10. Pittsburgh +4.5. Minnesota -4.5, now up to -5.5. New Mexico got steamed, -14 up to 15.5. And Marshall was a pick. The 3 public plays of the day over at the Westgate Superbook. USC, glad to hear that because we've got Illinois in our 3-team money line parlay as well. LSU going to be interesting. I did play Ole Miss in a couple of my Westgate college football contests, and then Notre Dame, interesting one there. I liked Arkansas early in the week and missed the number there, so I elected to stay off. And Art says his best bet today is Hawaii, and he even included the cute little rainbow emoji with the football. All right, VR, I think you are unmuted. You are ready to go.
Should be good to go.
Brand new setup. I know you just moved in the last 48 hours since I saw you.
I have a task rabbit lady coming over to organize the room later today. So
that is a wonderful idea. I think you got way too much stuff going on. So we're going to let you do what you do best and tell us all of the stuff that you've seen so far for this week in college football.
Thank you, Cal. I'll dive right in. I know you just talked about Pittsburgh. They're getting hit right now. Be cautious because I saw two-way action on that earlier in the week. And Pittsburgh seems to be the public side I'm seeing in the back end as well. Now, some of the higher marquee games that I know everybody's interested in, Alabama and Georgia. Here's what I got there. Alabama got steamed at +3. Alabama also got steamed on the money line. And also the under 53 as well. So they're on Alabama and they're on the under in that game. Penn State, Oregon, they laid the 3.5 with the Penn State side. Mississippi, we talked about that. Mississippi got bet on the money line. I saw more money line sharp action than actually on the point spread on the Mississippi side. So as far as the big games go, that's what we're seeing there. Now, some of the other steam plays we could talk about. Ohio State, and I know it looks public as well because they're teasing it. They're money line parlaying it as well. But I did see Ohio State get bet by betting syndicates as well, and they went under 52 in the Ohio State and Washington game. I personally think Ohio State's the best team in college football. A couple more college football moves for you. 125 under 64.5. Notre Dame, Arkansas under 64.5. I'm seeing one-sided public money over. They are blindly betting that one over, and you're seeing a lot of sharp bettors picking off any rogue numbers to go under in that Notre Dame Arkansas game. Stanford -1.5 and 2. Colorado late game picking off 7s. So you're seeing one-sided action on the favorite there. That's why you're seeing 6.5s, but they know they could limit risk. All they have to do is go to 7. There'll be more than enough sharps there ready to grab it with Colorado. So pay attention to the odds logic screen, or like I said, at the very least, the WagerTalk screen to see what the books are doing with that game. Arkansas State, I'm sure Others spoke about that. They got steam from 4, 3.5, 3. So Arkansas State getting a lot of love. Memphis -13. And like I always do, one added game over 47.5 and 48. Stetson and Dayton. And that's, pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot of college football, but those are confirmed without resistance, not scalpable, not being set up for any middles or anything like that.
All right, Vera, let's take a couple of questions here from the audience. Jacob McNeil wants to know, what are you seeing on the Texas A&M Auburn game? Any sharp-sided action? I know Marco gave out Texas A&M. He said it was his trap game this week on the college football edition of Bet On It. I kind of leaned Auburn, but back-to-back road games kind of enough to push me away. I did end up playing them in a couple college contests. Your thoughts on this game, or have you seen anything prominent in the back ends?
No, I haven't seen any sharp action. I'm even looking again now and hadn't seen anything on that side. I did see the under. The under gets steam from a group, and that's opposite the public too. That the one-sided action that sticks out on that game is over money from the public. I'm seeing good two-way action. You're always going to get a little heavier money on the favorite, especially when you add in money line parlays, when you add in teasers, but nothing really sticking out except for that over from the public, sharp under from the wise guys.
All right. I know tomorrow you're going to have a edition of the Steam Room out. Can you promote that before we take a couple more of these questions?
Absolutely. We are going to go live that final hour heading into NFL games. I'm going to go through every NFL game as quickly as possible to share sides, totals, props. We get live bets coming in, and more importantly, we put in those teasers about 15 minutes to kick off. We're 7-1 on those teasers through 3 weeks of the NFL season. Currently number 1 in NFL in the regular season. I feel really good about week 3 card. Feel good about today's college card. Hopefully we're discussing a big day Saturday tomorrow in the Steam Room. Make sure you join us. It will be free, and I'll answer all your questions. We'll talk risk management. We'll go over year-to-date results and all that good stuff. Again, it'll be 12 noon, but first I'll be on here at about 11 a.m. Eastern going over last call with you guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ariel will be back hosting tomorrow, so you can catch VR up first with her here, as well as John Murray, Carmine Bianco, going over all that NFL slate. Now, Lou wants to know my thoughts on K-State. We'll get to those questions here later on with Ralph.
I'm seeing a lot of K-State love.
Fine, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. So I have a lot of buddies, and I tweeted this the other night when we were watching the Army ECU game. I'm like, K-State lost to this offense? Like, this is just a dreadful offense. Yes, the defensive side of Army held the ball for 90% of the second half. That is something that did happen. Yes, there was a wonky touchdown that got called back. There was a lot of weird things that happened in that game, but the reality is I don't think this K-State team is tough. And I had a buddy go, well, Chris Kleiman's fighting for his job. No, he's not. He's best friends with the athletic director. And that's probably not something I should say that would benefit me to say out to 1,500 people watching live, but that is the reality. So if you guys are betting on Kansas State today because you think that they're due for a bounce back after a bye, I think that's the wrong move. If you guys are betting on K-State today because you think their coach is in the hot seat, that's also another wrong move. I'll tell you this. I do think K-State is a much better team than we've seen, but so was Florida State last year, who ended up finishing the season 2-10. The Dublin Aer Lingus curse is real. I am convinced this is not a good spot because UCF just had a tragic medical emergency. I believe it was a heart attack with one of their coaches. They're going to come out and play just as hard. So we can argue both sides of the coin here. I thought 6 was a completely egregious number. Now we're seeing it down to 5. VR, you're saying a lot of people are on K-State, and I'm not really understanding it.
Yeah, seeing in the back end, like recreational accounts, it's all one-sided. Like I'm surprised. I lost with K-State a couple weeks ago. I kind of been downgrading, but I wanted your opinion on that. Real quickly, I just got to second what Emmanuel say. You look absolutely stunning today, just real bright.
You know what it is? Every time I'm at my dad's house,
really good look.
I have a different ring light. Maybe this is the ring. Maybe this is the lighting I should use.
Yeah. It looks absolutely stunning.
Thank you, VR. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Let's see what else we've got here. Any other questions? Yes,
Someone asked about Tennessee, Mississippi State game. Yep. Here's what I'll tell you. You're seeing that line drop where it sits now. I like Tennessee or pass. I get it if you got an early number on the home dog. I think it's just dropped too significantly for me. I haven't touched the game, but I think it's a favorite or pass situation right now.
All right. Anything else you want to go over, VR, before we let you go? I know you got a busy Saturday ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just really excited, honestly, about today's card. I love the college football board. I'm a little lower volume this week, was able to narrow down some really strong plays. I love the UFC card. I got 4% and a couple 3% in there as well. And hopefully we cheer in a winning Saturday and roll that in the Sunday NFL. Real good card. Join me for the steam room. Best of luck to you all today. Thank you again, Kel, for having me on. And hope the whole Wager Talks team does some damage today.
Absolutely. We are here to do some damage. We're going to answer all your college football questions here with Ralph Michaels up next. We'll bring him in. And then, of course, we've got Steve Merrill. And he can find the link. We're going to let Kyle in. But if he can't find the link, no UFC today. Not my deal. Ralph Michaels is laughing because he knows I run a tight ship over here at WagerTalk. And of course, I'm sitting on a tall stool and the guy that's 6'6" is sitting on a small stool. So we look completely opposite heights right now. But Ralph Michaels, welcome in. How's your college football season been? We haven't talked except for that you sent me that we may be opposite on a play, and I'll leave that to promote because it's your 5% play, and I was not very happy with that. And Ralph is muted too. We got everybody muted this morning. I appreciate them muting themselves in the background because that is one of my rules. It's like when you're not on air, you have to mute yourself. So at least they listen on that front.
We are back. Number 2 in college football since the start of 2024 behind Mr. Boss Benjamin. So him and I have been battling the entire time. 11-6 this year. So very excited. I do have a 5% since the start of last year. I've had 6 5% in college football, perfect 6-0. I've got a weird stat for you, Kelly. Not a weird stat, but when a team is playing UCF off a loss, like Kansas State is, they're 16-1 against the spread. So, they've been beaten up. It's sort of random because it's over 3 years, but just something to throw out there for you.
Hey, that's not a bad stat. Listen, I'm not cheering against my team. I'm just trying to be a realist, which I think every sports handicapper should be a realist about what their team is going through, any drama, any BS. And those things are occurring right now, right? Like the wheels have kind of fallen off there in Manhattan, Kansas, whether people want to admit it or not. All right, Ralph and I are going to get into some of these college football questions. Ralph, we finished over here with a question from JoJo before finding out with VR about Mississippi State, Tennessee. Mississippi State was real close. Well, not real close, but they were pretty far down on my list. I thought, all right, I'm looking for those outright underdogs. Can I make a case for this Mississippi State team? Kind of break down what you think about Tennessee, Mississippi State, and whether you think it's worth a wager or if at this point in time it's worth a pass.
Oh, I like Mississippi State, Kelly. First of all, we have a situation that is 82% against the spread. And what is that situation? When a conference home dog is on a win streak of 4 or more games, they are 80% against the spread. That's a pretty amazing number when you think about it. And people talk about Mississippi State and some of the defenses in the SEC. Mississippi State has played a very weak schedule, no question. Southern Miss, Arizona State, Alcorn State, Northern Illinois. So all you could do is play the schedule that you were given. They have held all 4 opponents to a season low. So even though you played crappy competition, you still did your job against that crappy competition. When I look at Tennessee's defense, allowing 502 yards to Georgia scares the heck out of me. Allowing the 377 yards to Syracuse scares me. Their defense is actually number 62 when you take what their defense has done against the opponent's rest of their averages. To me, I wouldn't be surprised if this is an outright upset. I am with you on the Bulldogs.
Ooh, okay. That might have just been enough to get me to the window to add them to the list. Truth be told, Ralph, I have stopped betting a lot earlier in the week. Years past, I was always betting Mondays, Tuesdays. This year, I was like, every single game I have beat the market on, it hasn't mattered. Every single game that I got the worst of the number, I end up doing well, whether it was Vandy or Maryland, whatever. It's just been kind of an interesting year. So I may add them even no longer at 7.5 to my list. All right, Ralph, you have a 5% play up at WagerTalk. Let everybody know what that, well, you can't tell them what that is, but you get the idea. Let everybody know where they can get it.
Well, again, number 2 in college football since the start of last year. And it's a no-brainer. Whether you are going to sign up for me, VR, Steve Merrill, the weekend warrior is the only way to go. We started it 3 weeks ago. We were impressed with the numbers. Last week, it almost doubled. I'm expecting it to double again, and why wouldn't it? My 5% is $35, or you can get all of my Saturday college football, all of my Sunday NFL, and if I have an NFL play on Monday, you'll get that as well for just $14 more than the price of that 5%. You still got an hour. Actually, I think you got a couple hours. I don't believe I have a noon game today, so you got a couple hours to get me. You've got about 6 or 7 hours before my 5% goes, so plenty of time to jump in on the Weekend Warrior.
All right, Jeff Schroeder has a question, and I'll take the reins on it. I need someone to talk me off IU today. Iowa looks like Illinois to me, and I think Signetti will absolutely roll them 3-0 as road favorites last year. Ralph, this is one of my favorite bets this week. I do like Iowa. I mentioned just a minute ago, Art DiCesare from the Westgate Superbook said that the Westgate will need them. I'll go back over those needs after we get done with Ralph as well. And so that just kind of gave me even the extra confident push to say, all right, Iowa has a real opportunity to win this game outright. They've been holding their opponents to less than 14.5 points per game. This is where, an immovable force meets an immovable force, right? Offense versus defense. Kind of break down this game for me. I'm curious to see if we agree.
Well, number one, you have to remember this. Playing at home in the biggest game maybe of your biggest regular season game of your lifetime, last week against Illinois in that primetime game, blowing it out. And now what do? You have to go on the road against a very good defense for your first road game of the year. Last year, we know how good Indiana was. And what did they do their first road trip? Well, they won significantly, but it was at UCLA. Then they go to Northwestern, and then they go to Michigan State. So they didn't play a team that had a winning record on the road until they went to Ohio State and lost by 23, and then at Notre Dame losing by 10 in the playoffs. You look at Iowa. I was on Iowa last week, and boy, did Gronkowski ever get bashed. Against Albany, he was 9 of 16 for 48 yards. Against Iowa State, they had 83 yards passing. The light bulb clicked, guys. Against UMass, they put up 435 yards. He was 21 of 31. And then last week at Rutgers, he was 12 of 18, 186. Remember, Mark Gronkowski started 55 games at South Dakota State. This isn't like a true freshman that started the season. He just struggled the first couple games in the office. This Iowa team is completely different with an offense that can score points. And then you look at their defense. They held Iowa State to a season low. They held UMass to a season low. They held Rutgers 61 yards per game under what their average is. And on the season, they are number 11 in the NFL on defense, holding their opponents under their average. I can't talk you off the Indiana, Kelly, because I'm with you on Iowa as well.
Very, very, very happy to hear that, Ralph. We're going to take a few more questions. We got about 10 minutes left with Ralph before Steve Merrill gets in here. So Kentucky at USC, rain in the forecast, Cats with the strong run, Cox weak defending the run, money line on Kentucky. I'm going to take the reins on this one because it is in my 3-team money line parlay. I liked Kentucky here, and hand up, I've been betting against South Carolina all season long. Here's the reality. I feel like that Virginia Tech game right out of the gate got a little wonky, defensive score, special teams, those things tend to skew the point spread. Then I looked at it and said, all right, what's the real problem here? And that was before the Vandy game. And I said, oh my gosh, it's Mike Shula. Mike Shula is running this offense into the ground. You have Lenora Sellers, yet you have the worst third down every single time, 9.41 yards. That is the worst in college football that they're averaging on third down. Thank God for Lenora Sellers. Hopefully for me, he does not run all over the place this weekend, but knowing me, he probably will. All right, let's see if there's any interesting questions here. Any thoughts on Appalachian State? Here's an interesting game. Ralph, I've kind of stopped following the Mountain West. Boise State was one of those Mountain West powerhouses, but since I left Las Vegas, the Mountain West just hasn't really been on my radar. This is a pretty sizable point spread for a Boise State team that we've kind of seen not really perform like we expected them to, right? Remember, they were the team out of the game of 5 that was supposed to get into the college football playoff.
Yeah, aren't they almost always the favorite going into the preseason? You look at the USF game, and of course we saw USF play well for a couple more weeks after that, and they had a 6-yard edge. but they really did. The USF game was not as bad of a loss as the score indicated because they were -3 turnovers. Then they play Eastern Washington and Air Force. So, you see an offense that's averaging 536 yards, but the App State defense, we really don't know how good it is. On paper, you look at App State's defense and you're going to say, wow, they're allowing 274 yards per game and only 2.1 yards per carry. You have a defensive dog getting over 3 scores. How can you not back them? Well, I can tell you why you don't back them. Their games are Charlotte, Lindenwood, and Southern Miss. And oh yeah, by the way, against Southern Miss, they ended up losing that game as a sizable favorite, 38-22. So to me, it's a game that I just don't know what I'm going to take. I'm going to watch and learn. I have no interest betting this Boise State team coming off a Air Force win on the road and a road game against Notre Dame on deck. So the situation says App State. But again, against this week of a schedule, and Gillen and Swan combined are still only throwing for under 60%. Now they're playing this defense. So no real opinion on the side, but I cannot get to Boise State because of the scheduling spot. I could say this probably could have been Marco's sandwich game of the week between a conference road game, Air Force, and a road game against Notre Dame.
Very, very good point. There's a couple other sandwich spots too. I think it's Utah State, I saw on Twitter, is also in one of those spots. That's a very good point there, Ralph. All right. I might have to add that one to my list to look at as well. Let's go to Crypto Parlay God. He wants to know if you like Iowa State or Duke today. Ralph, I looked at Arizona. I had them on my long list as well. I know Marco broke them down on Bet on It. It was a spot where he thought they were a barking dog. I blinked. It went to 4.5. I said, all right, maybe this is just something I can just play stale in the contest.
Well, when you look at injuries, major injuries in college football, and, don't discount this. Angeli's loss to Syracuse it could be as big as any loss of any quarterback. I mean, he was that important to that team the way they got started. 377 yards at Tennessee is a very good game. 461 against Connecticut, 600 against Colgate. But, you saw last week against Clemson, 433 yards. So, Ricky Collins comes in. Now, I don't mind taking over for an injured quarterback the first game. I do truly believe in the injury system. When your superstar or best player gets hurt, your team rallies. We often see defenses rise to the occasion. Even though their defense isn't good, allowing 455 yards, they've been shredded over the passing game. They allowed 664 yards the last 2 weeks to Colgate and to Clemson, and we know how bad Clemson's offense has been. You look at the Duke defense, not impressed at all, allowing 535 yards last week to NC State. They were 4 turnovers, +4. Any college team that's +4 turnovers is going to win the game. That's the reason they won that game. They also lost the game against Illinois because they were -5 turnovers. So this line adjustment to me is too high in this situation with Duke being a road favorite. Remember, they went to Tulane. They couldn't win in that situation. I actually do lean Syracuse here.
Ooh, that's a really interesting dynamic. I always forget about the injured player theory because I don't know how to quantify it. So it makes it a little difficult, but you're right. It is a good situation. And maybe his injury is getting just a little overblown. All right, we're going to take a couple more questions for Ralph before Steve Merrill comes in. Kyle Anthony, I just logged in. He's waiting in the wings. So if you guys have a UFC question, make sure you guys drop it in the chat. This game is disgusting, but why is Northwestern -6.5 against a more talented UCLA team that just fired their coach? Ralph, this is always one of those interesting thoughts. Art DiCesare sent me the list. Oklahoma State was on there. I'm like, of course we want to play Oklahoma State after they just fired Gundy. So why would we not want to play UCLA after they just fired their coach?
I'm looking. My power ratings actually have Northwestern only by 4, but it's a situation where I can't back UCLA. No way. I actually lean Northwestern. With my power ratings that far off, I usually always lean with that team, but in this case I can't. Why? Well, because you have a team that traveled to UNLV, gave up 30 points, and lost by 7. Then they lose to New Mexico, and now they're traveling again to Northwestern. The Northwestern team, you go to Tulane and you lose. Was it a bad loss? Yeah. But again, they were -5 turnovers. You guys got to remember, if a team is not completely turnover prone, you basically have to throw out a game, the stats, when you're -5. You just can't get anything going turning the ball over. The next week against Western Illinois, they do well. Last week against Oregon, yes, they lost 34-14. I think Oregon is a top 2 or 3 team in the country, no question. They were only outgained by 60 yards, and they were -1 turnover. But they rushed for 178 yards and 4.8 yards per carry. Why does that matter? Well, let's see. UCLA's rush defense is allowing 244 yards per game, 5.5 yards per carry. Any offense that can run the ball against this type of defense is going to look much better, even if Preston Stone is completing under 60% so far this year with a 3-6 ratio. When play action is working and you can run the ball, Hinnon has a 4.9 YPA. Porter has a 7.6 YPA. Northwestern wins and covers this game.
All right, we got a couple more questions here in the chat. Jake wants to know what my 3-team money line parlay is. Jake, come on. You can't go to my Instagram and watch the video for me. We put in so much work over there on that. I already gave you guys 2 of the legs. So if you've been paying attention, you know what it is. Let's see. Any other questions from the chat? Let's go BYU Colorado. Ralph, here was a spot where I had Colorado kind of circled, and I thought, all right, we're going to look at Colorado a little bit better. And then see the face you just made? Kind of made the same face. I was like, oh, do I really? I can bet some stinky underdogs, but I don't know if I can bet that bad of underdogs. BYU has looked all right in some of their road starts here this season, where I thought maybe they would falter. ECU last week, I thought, hey, this is a bad spot for BYU. Nope, they got the job done. Talk to me about Colorado BYU. I know that John Murray did tell me, let's see, BYU took some sharp action early in the week on Tuesday.
I'm looking something up, Kel, and I will say this. So many of us remember Colorado last year and the offense they had. Well, right now, Kelly, they are number 115 in plays per game run. Last week against Wyoming, they ran the ball 31 times. They passed 28. That is 59 plays. At Houston, they ran the ball 23 times, 58 plays. The week before against Delaware, they did open up the pass game just to get the quarterbacks a little bit of experience. But I look at BYU's defense. They allowed 404 yards to East Carolina on the road last week in that 34-13 win because they were +2 turnovers. But knowing they allowed 404 yards is one thing. But when you look at East Carolina, that is actually 78 yards per game less than East Carolina is averaging. So they've held all 3 foes to a season low. They run the ball much more than they pass. They're running the ball 123 times this year, passing for 71. Colorado's pace is slow. BYU's pace is slow. Only way I go in this game is under. And in this case, I think it's going to be a close conference game early on. I would prefer under first half in this matchup.
All right, under first half for Ralph. We're going to let Ralph get out of here. He's got a busy Saturday, hopefully laying by the pool and enjoying himself. I hope catching some college football winners. Ralph, really quick before we let you go, can you let everybody know about the Weekend Warrior over at WagerTalk.com?
Again, Weekend Warrior, $49. All of Saturday college football, all of Sunday NFL. Plus, if you have a Monday night NFL play, it gets added. One important note I want to add, it's only $49. Any cap where it's available for anyone. But if you are waiting to next week to sign up for it, sign up at the beginning of the week, guys. So as soon as we load the plays, you get them. You don't have to wait till Saturday. If you buy it on Tuesday and I start releasing my games on Tuesday, you'll get those plays with the lines that I want you to bet them at immediately. So next week on the Weekend Warrior, do not wait till the end of the week. Find out who you want to sign up for, grab them early, and make sure you take advantage of those of the best lines available.
Ralph is the best at Cal Sports LV over on social media. If you guys are looking for any other extra trends and angles, you guys can also go ahead, Ralph.
I was just going to say, tell Kyle Anthony, congratulations for finding the link. I know it's going to be an exciting day for him.
He's waiting in the wings, but first we're going to bring in Steve Merrill. Also, WT.buzz/RM is Ralph's homepage over there on WagerTalk.com if you are looking for that 5% play of his. Let me actually do one quick thing before we bring in Steve Merrill. I'm going to read you guys the good old Westgate Superbook needs once again, just for you guys. Art said they're going to need Iowa. They're going to need Central Michigan. They're going to need Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Georgia. The public is on USC, LSU, and Notre Dame. And Art's best bet is Hawaii, +7. All right, let's bring in Steve Merrill. He's filling in for Art today at last minute. I appreciate Steve, as always, coming in. We saw each other yesterday. We had an extended version of Wager Talk today. So lots of Steve and Kelly today. Steve, we're going to get right into this action. Lots of people have questions. Let's talk about Arkansas Notre Dame. That is the game that I think is maybe getting a little too overblown. Now, I considered Arkansas for my 3-team money line parlay. I did. I thought, okay, let's look and see if the Hogs can bounce back. Marco gave out Memphis last week in a sandwich spot, and I thought, can Memphis win the game? And they looked ugly mid-third quarter, and all of a sudden here comes Memphis, and then Arkansas does what they do, and they turn the ball over in the red zone. Notre Dame, their defense has some real issues here. Talk to me about Arkansas and Notre Dame, Steve.
Yeah, first of all, I hosted yesterday for the first time with you as the guest. Now we've gone back to normal. Things are normal again. The host has become the hostess. No, that's not right. Anyway, the interviewer has become the interviewee. This is a game I haven't talked about this week on any videos or shows, so I'm glad you brought it up. It is one of the better games. It's an early game here at noon Eastern on ABC National TV. You know, I talked about this with the Chiefs game yesterday in the Ravens. I always kind of look to play against the Super Bowl loser. Historically, almost half the time they don't even make the playoffs, where I think we could take that same angle in recent years with the national championship loser. You know, you saw TCU have that regression. Washington had a losing season last year. They regressed. So Notre Dame would fit the bill this year. They had that tough week 1 game, and then they had a little bit of a fortunate game against Texas A&M. That was a tough game as well. I think this is a play against team this year, so I have no problem taking Arkansas right now. I'm calling for the outright upset, actually. I think the Hogs win this one straight up at noon Eastern, and that goes off in about a half hour. Not a game I touched on, but Notre Dame, I think, is a bit overrated this season. I think Arkansas may be a little bit underrated for the reasons you mentioned.
Yep, I'm with you. I do think that Notre Dame is a little bit overhyped. Robin's a question about the Westgate needs. Is it based off sharp action or public action? I think it's based off total money. So
Right.
Whether they've got a lot of sharp money bet on one side, whether they've got a lot of public action bet on the other, I think it is a base overall need. It will be a bigger win for them up at that point in time. So, for example, they need Georgia. I've seen a lot of books online say they need Alabama. So kind of take that with what you guys will. I'm happy that they need Iowa. I always do love being against the whole world. And of course, the whole world is going to be on Indiana. Let's talk about Washington. Mel wants to know about Washington. This is a game I feel like should be a more marquee game, but it's kind of really flying under the radar, Steve, because we have such a great slate of games. Ohio State, 8.5-point favorite, down to 8 over there at Washington. Kind of one of those spots where we don't see Ohio State falter often, but do you think they may have trouble with the Huskies?
So I did a standalone video for this game. It's a 3:30 Eastern mid-afternoon game. So deep dive available here on Wager Talk TV. And I was conflicted on this one. I do think Ohio State's as good as anybody in the country. And I mentioned how Washington regressed last year. They had that 6-7 season after making the national finals. For that reason, though, I think they could be an upside. You know, we saw TCU do that the year before. As I also mentioned, they actually played better since. The problem is I do think Ohio State's the better team, the much better offensive team. My 10,000 game simulation favors Ohio State by only 6 in this game. So at the current line of 8, as you mentioned, I do think there is some line value with the home dog here. I don't know if I'm going to call for the outright upset, but one catalyst that could come into play is the fact this is the first true start on the road for a very young quarterback. So just saying, this might be a difficult spot in a hostile environment. I think Washington can hang within the 8 points.
Yeah, I may end up getting to the window with Washington. We're going to find out here, Steve. This is the problem. I have started betting so much later in the week because I feel like I'm getting better of the information, and that's what I prefer now as opposed to trying to beat the market, right? And also, you can't get down as much earlier in the week. So then you're betting some at this number, and then the market moves, and next thing you know, you're trying to get another 500 or a dime down. And it just is one of those things where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wait Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday, we get all those needs from the Westgate. I get some other information, and I like to tail some sharp friends of mine. Let's talk about a couple of the games that you like. I know you did a Fade the Public video over there on the WagerTalk YouTube channel right after we got done filming WagerTalk today. So that is up. What else do you have up over there? And then what other games should we be looking at?
Yeah, the NFL videos are all locked and loaded. I don't know if it's actually cool. The Insiders got a sneak peek at the Fade the Public video last night before it goes live this afternoon. So that's another reason, by the way, to be a insider for $2.99, not $2.99, less than $3 a month. I think it's wt.buzz/insiders, I believe is the shortcut. But they got the sneak peek 12 hours sooner than everybody else on my Fade the Public video. That will be up in a couple hours for everybody on YouTube TV. The college football top 25 video is up there right now. 6 games in depth. So games we haven't talked about here on that video as well. And then some standalone videos. They had Ohio State game I did and some other ones. So, hey, it's all free right here on WagerTalk TV. And, oh, by the way, Kelly, bonus free play on my page right now. I don't do a lot of totals in college football this early, but I have my first free total of the season up for a night game tonight on Saturday. So go get that on my page right now. My college football free play total, my top total of the week, free. Steve Merrill, WagerTalk.com, and get there quicker, wt.buzz/SM.
Love that, love that, love that. All right, guys, if you have a question for Steve, drop it in the chat. We got Kyle Anthony waiting in the wings. We got a couple of UFC questions for him. I know he's going to touch on a pair of fights before we get to kickoff. I don't see any more questions. Ralph did a really great job. I know Steve filled in last minute there when I found out that Art wasn't coming in. I'm using Steve's Fade the Public techniques to fade my wife so I can watch the games.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. Like we always say, you don't always fade the public. Sometimes the public is right. Wives are normally never right, but you got to tell them they're always right. So that's how you fade the public there. It depends. I'm sure she's a lovely lady. Sounds fantastic. I will say this, Kelly. You talked about the needs with the Westgate, though. Yeah, it's 100% money. And I think people forget that the sharps bet 10 to 20 times more than the public, right? So when I'm doing the public data for my videos, I'm looking at ticket counts. I'm looking at consensus contests, like where a lot of squares are playing. And most of the public money in the NFL does come in on Sundays. Ace and I talked about that yesterday. So, I'm doing a little foreshadowing when I'm doing the video on Friday night into Saturday. But yeah, look, the sharps bet 10 to 20 times more than the public. So ticket count and money are two different things. And when you see a high ticket count on one game, but a high money count on the other side, that actually sometimes is a sharp square to buy that you want to pay attention to.
So also interesting, Steve, and this dates way back to when we had the proxy service. And even before then, when I was in the contests, back in my early days of Vegas, if you faded the top 5 selections.
Correct. Yeah. For years.
It was money. And it's been money in not only the Westgate Superbook, but also the circuit contest. That just had me think the top 5 most selected super contest college teams in week 5, Ole Miss with 254, Washington +8 with 221, Oregon +3.5, Pitt, VR said he thought Pitt was the public underdog today with 204 selections, and then Georgia -3 with 191. So very interesting list there to see who. I would say if you're going to spend $500 in a college football contest, either A, you got to think a little bit of something.
Right.
Or B, you just don't care about money and you're just trying to have fun for the season.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Circa one especially is that's sharper than all of them, I think. The Westgate has been over years, but you get a lot of public money in the Westgate contest because the entry cost was lower, like you said, and you had more entries. But yeah, for decades, if you faded that number 1 pick, especially in the Westgate, you made money every season. And something you got to be careful with the contest is a lot of times they're playing stale lines. So you have to look and say, well, is this one heavy because the line is 1 to 2 points better than what the market line is? But even then, it probably loses more times than it wins. It really is an amazing phenomenon. And it goes back to something that you and I know, Kelly. The odds makers aren't that wrong not too often. And if they are, they're not off by more than a couple points. And you talked about playing later in the week versus early in the week. Yes, the lines are sharper later in the week, but you have to decide on what type of capper you want to be. I'm not trying to chase numbers on Sunday night, Monday morning. It's just not my style either. But sometimes, like Ace and I talked about yesterday on Friday, you got to stay off a game. If the line moves against you, don't have that value anymore on Friday, you've got to pass. But fading the public does win more than it loses. And by the way, all 3 weeks this year, my NFL video, You have made money if you faded the public plays I've given out. It's now 11-5-1 so far after 3 weeks. And I had mentioned it the first couple weeks. I mentioned it in the video this weekend, which means the public will probably go like 4-0. We'll see what happens.
No. This is still bath week, Steve.
Yeah,
We
weeks 3 and 4 usually
chaos.
are pretty good ugly underdogs. Like Ralph had
Yes.
that 0-3 chart the other day about how on the blind those teams have made money for a decade now in the NFL.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're going to get you out of here. We're going to get to talking UFC. We have almost 3,500 of you guys watching live. Congrats to all the new members joining here on the WagerTalk Insiders. WT.buzz/insiders, as Steve mentioned, just $2.99 to join. You guys are going to get early access to videos. You guys are going to get early access to free Steam rooms. And we've got a lot more planned as we start to build that membership program. Steve, I hope you have a very profitable weekend. And I'm sure we'll see you here on Last Call in the near future. Kyle
Thanks,
Anthony, he figured out the link. I'm so happy Kyle is here. And he knows I'm going to bust his balls about it because that's what I do here at WagerTalk. That is my job.
Wait, you gave like a hint. And then I scrolled, I looked around, I found Dan Alexander's name, I messaged him, and I asked him where it was.
Wow. We're throwing Dan. Dan's not the producer today. Today's supposed to be his day off. We actually pay someone else to fill in for him so he can have the weekends off. So if he wants to go back to working weekends, I am full on. I'm full on.
He definitely gave it to me firm. Like, dude, this is where it is, bro. Like, this is where this shit is. Like, I was like, okay, all right, I got it. Kelly stonewalled me. Dan was a little nicer. I'll take it.
Yeah, of course, Dan's going to be nicer. That's the problem. Somebody's got to be the bad cop here. And we're going to talk some UFC. And we've got some questions from our audience. Kyle, I'm going to have you go into your first fight right out of the gate. The joke is here. Anytime I host a show with Kyle, he always picks the hardest names for me to try to pronounce. So I'm just going to concede and let Kyle talk about this first fight.
All right, so the first one we will talk about is the main event, and we're going to talk Carlos Ulberg and Dominic Reyes. So in this fight here first, when you look at Dominic Reyes, I mean, back 2020, he went out there, he almost beat the GOAT of the UFC, the GOAT of MMA, John Jones. It was a debatable fight, a very close fight. Some would argue that he won 3-2. MMA judging is MMA judging, and they gave it to John Jones. And after that fight, the title fight hangover for him was about as bad as it gets for Reyes because he went out there. Everyone thought, wow, you competed with John Jones. And then he gets knocked out 3 straight times in absolutely brutal fashion. He got knocked out against Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prochazka, Ryan Spann. I mean, not a good look overall when you're looking at really the competition level is there, the power is there, but the chin may not be there. Then he comes back after a 2-year layoff. And now Reyes is on a 3-fight winning streak, and it looks good, on paper. He went out there, knocks out a couple guys. But the big question, and really the question I think that anyone who's betting this fight is, where's Reyes' chin? And those 3 fights, they kind of, I think, gave a little bit of like a false sense of security, because in order to test a durability, you need to get hit. And those 3 fights that he came back, he didn't really get hit. You have Dustin Jacoby landed only 6 significant strikes before he got knocked out. Nikita Krylov landed 4 significant strikes before he got knocked out. And Pillow Fist Anthony Smith landed 21 significant strikes, and then he got finished. And credit to Reyes. Guy's got power, there's no doubt. But the chin still is in question. And even his knockout against Ryan Spann, where he lost, Ryan Spann landed a jab, and it knocked him out. And that was the 8th strike of the fight. So this to me is a spot where really you've got Carlos Ulberg coming in, an elite level kickboxer, great distance management, great at range, much more technical striker between the two. I think has got the power as well. And I don't really see this fight going to the ground. I don't see takedowns. I don't see Reyes looking for these takedowns. I think this plays out on the feet, which again allows this opportunity for a knockout to materialize. And I do think this 5-rounder is really going to be the part where you're going to see really Ulberg early maybe pick him apart, but land something big here. And the one thing we do know is you can't fix glass chins. You just can't. There's never been a moment where we've seen a guy, hey, this guy always gets knocked out, can't take a punch, and all of a sudden he can take a punch. I don't think that's going to happen here. I think that Ulberg lands a big shot, gets the knockout. So getting off the -250 number, you can get Ulberg by knockout sitting around -125. I like the spot, and I think that he wins this and ends up fighting for the title next.
Kyle, we got a question in the chat. Is there a reason to think Ulberg will not Won't win by finish, excuse me.
Well, the only thing that I look at with that is that Uber could maybe play it a little bit, a little patient, not look to get into the striking zone that you're going to see of Reyes. Reyes obviously has power. He's a guy that can bring that. But I think that if he does, it's pitter-patter shots from the outside. But this is Ulberg in Australia on home soil. I think that he gets this knockout, does it in spectacular fashion, and then, fights for the title.
All right, awesome. Talk to me about, this is UFC Perth, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody in here is hanging out for college football. They want early NFL, but we moved you over here to last call because I think UFC recreational bettors, myself included, we're not talking about UFC early in the week. We're not you. We want to know, okay, it starts at this time. I want to get a little bit of action down while I've got my college football on one TV and I've got the UFC fight on my laptop. Talk to me about where they can watch this and where they can catch it because it's on the other side of the world.
Right. So a lot of times these, especially when you're talking about some of these are in China, they're starting at 10 a.m. This one's at Perth. So it is starting at 7. So we are getting the right time frame here. It is going to be on ESPN Plus. So you're going to be able to see that. And, I'm sure it's every single sports book you go to will be having that. But yeah, this fight, we will go a little bit longer. It will be from probably 7 Eastern to probably 1 in the morning. So a lot of betting opportunities. I always talk about that each week. It doesn't have to be the highest level fight. I know the sexy ones people want to bet next week is UFC 320. It's a massive card. We're going to talk about that next week, but this is a spot here where there's opportunities to make money every week on UFC. That's why it's year round. That's why there's opportunities.
And that's why Kyle's here on last call because we don't care. We want to make money. That's why I'm here anyway. So we're looking at Ulberg here early on. And who else are we looking at in another fight, Kyle?
So the other fight here we're going to talk about is Josias Musasa. He is sitting around minus 160, minus 170. Other side, Colby Thickney, he's sitting around plus 130, plus 140. And this is a spot where you look at Musasa, and he's a guy that came into Dana White's Contender Series, had a lot of hype behind him. He's 7-0, 7 knockouts, 6 in the first round. He's got the cool nickname, the Knockout Wizard. I mean, he looks the part, and, he's explosive. He's got power. There's a lot of great things that he does do. But in the last 2 fights that he had, I thought were just really underwhelming. In his Dana White Contender Series fight, it was a fight where he won, but he won by split decision. And it was also a fight I thought he clearly lost. He was outstruck in every single round. He was taken down 4 times, and his opponent had 4 minutes of control time. And I think that's just a really bad showing for him for a spot where it really looked like a smash spot. Still, the UFC signs him, and his most recent fight was even worse, where he came in as a minus 750 favorite. A lot of hype still was around this guy, and he was fighting Carlos Vera, who is a jiu-jitsu guy, grappler, doesn't have much power, very, pitter-patter shots. And this is where he came into this fight. Vera knocks him down in the first round and submits him in the first round. And again, another terrible showing. Still, we're getting here an opportunity where he's still a favorite, and I think this line is wrong. I do think that Colby has the ability here, should be the favorite here. And also you look at what he can do. He's more well-rounded. He's training partners with Alexander Volkanovski. So, they're going to have a really good camp behind him, a really good game plan behind him. Also, his debut, I think, is skewing this line a little bit because he came in on short notice against Taporia's brother on short notice, no camp, and still had a good account of himself. He lost the fight, but he still had a very good account of himself. And I think this is a spot here where, yes, Musasa is going to have that explosiveness, that power, but I think he's very raw. He's very green. He makes a lot of mistakes here. And I think the takedowns will be there for Colby. So I think Colby can get this job done here. I think that the plus money number is still nice. It's starting to tighten a little bit, but I still like him here at the plus 130, plus 140.
Now you're speaking my language, Kyle. We know I love those nice little underdogs. All right, we've got about 12 minutes until kickoff here. Anything else you want to talk to our audience about UFC Perth related?
Yeah, I can give you another plus money we can talk about here. And the other one is going to be Justin Tafa between Louis Sutherland. Now, a lot of times when I come on these shows, I'm breaking down styles, analysis, skill-wise, all these things that we just talked about in the last fight. This fight is not that. This is 2 sloppy heavyweights who really are just going to swing in the middle. They're going to throw. It looks like this is, that's heavily tilted towards the under in this spot here. And, Sutherland's a guy who I don't think is very good. Most of the guys, this is UFC debut. Most of the guys that he fought were part-time garbage men on the side. Now he's fighting UFC caliber guy. Justin Tafa is not the greatest fighter by any means, but he is a guy that does have a lot of power, is going to be able to have the faster hand speed, good leg kicks, and I think he can mix it up a little bit. And I think that Sutherland's going to he kind of moves forward, just throws random wild shots here. And this is the spot where Justin Tafa, out of his 7 victories, all come by knockout here. I think Tafa gets this job done. I think there's a possibility he gets it within the first or second round. But if you're just looking Tafa by knockout, that's sitting around plus 125, plus 130, roughly around there. And I think that's how he does it here. Another guy, home soil guy, I think he gets the crowd going with that one.
I love those plus money plays from Kyle Anthony at Kyle Anthony UFC. You guys can catch him there over on social media. Kyle, let everybody know what you've got up for today over at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, so I have a couple plays up. I'm actually going to be adding, I have 3 plays in there right now. Going to be adding probably 5, probably have 2 more before we get in there. To your point before, Kelly, the weigh-ins were like midnight and everything's all different and changed. So normally I like to take a look at that before I finalize some of my plays. But I do have a 4% play since 2023 hitting at 71%. Feeling good about that one here. But again, next weekend, monster card, going to have a lot of plays. So check it out, WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, next weekend, Kyle's going to be joining us here in the last 20 minutes or so of Last Call, taking us up till kickoff, talking about all those UFC plays that maybe we need to be including in our college football watching. Just telling you guys, money is money. I love it. The UFC is one of my favorite sports. It probably saved me in the summer of 2020 from going absolutely and utterly cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. All right, Kyle, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everybody in the comment section. Shout out to all of our new insiders that joined today, wt.buzz/insiders. You guys are in for a real treat. We're going to try to get you guys some of that first and foremost information that you get here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Maybe it's a couple hours before, maybe it's a day before, but we are going to take care of you guys. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Ariel Epstein will be back tomorrow with Yanni the Greek, John Murray, Carmine Bianco. Joe Madden will be here Monday night before that doubleheader kickoff, hosting with the Perez. Have a great Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, guys. Good luck. Cash them, don't trash them.